Howdy everyone, it's me once again, the one and only Killerrodan. And today I'll be talking about making a particular film. In this case, we just keep this in mind. This is how I would have done the movie and how I would have wrote the storyline in this particular video. So again, just keep this in mind. This is how I would have done it. Since Wonder Woman had become a popular character recently, especially with her own film out, so I'm thinking, what if I had done her own sequel? Much earlier, a few months ago, I had already spoken about I would have made her own film the way I would have done it. In some ways, I'm still paying attention to what I've done then. But in some ways, I'm going to be acting as if this will be a direct sequel to the Wonder Woman film, which was actually a prequel. So this film of mine would be actually paying attention to the events of what had occurred in her prequel, which took place in World War I. While at the same time, it's also paying attention to the version of the film of Wonder Woman that I planned months ago. So if you want to see that video, I'll put it down in the description box below for anyone that would be interested in seeing that. So we'd be paying attention to both films. So as in her own movie, she recalls what her mother had said, stating that the human race does not deserve a hero like her. But of course she's going to be rebellious and act as a hero anyway because she feels it's on her duty to act like one. So she feels that there's some trouble going on in the world. She just goes on and trying to help people. In my storyline, these two individuals would have actually existed. And these two individuals are terrorist leaders. However, before Saddam Hussein was actually killed off, their terrorist groups actually disbanded. And then when she has gone from the picture, they created their own terrorist group, so to speak. And so basically what happened here is that whatever territory Bin Laden had when he was alive is now being taken over by the other individual. This can actually occur in the same storyline. Of course, after this, their own separate ISIS terrorist group has been created, of course, at this point. And this can be actually implied in the whole story. Of course, Wonder Woman could have actually heard about this mess. And of course, want to, bring the terrorism down. And this would take place in the same expanded universe that DC has been doing for quite a while. Yes, I know that seems rather dark, but that seems to be the direction in which they are aiming for anyway. But still, of course, around the same time, Bush can be brought up, of course, when he was president. Yeah, this can go back and forth and kind of a thing. And of course, there's some disagreements among him and the people. Wonder Woman is too busy at first anyway training, but then she hears about what Bush had been doing, and of course she is really displeased about what he had been doing as time went. Wonder Woman feels as if Bush at the time was hiding something, so of course she does some investigation of her own, and as it turns out he is actually hiding something. She looks through some documents to find out that the ISIS terrorist organization had actually planned from the start to make something really horrific to take down the United States government. However, Bush had actually failed to actually tell anybody about it. In my version of events, folks, they had taken some places of the Middle East, but they still need some more resources. They still want to take over some more stuff. This needs to be done in their eyes by taking over completely of the Middle East, but they need to do that in order to complete their mission. This information was given to the United States government thanks to a soldier who had sacrificed himself to retrieve this information. He was killed on the spot when he was giving the United States government the information, so at least in some ways his death was not done in vain. Of course, there will be a ceremony for him. Wonder Woman feels guilty as a result because she feels like she could have done something. She should have been there in order to prevent his death. So in some ways she is motivated by this situation to do something. So instead of just mopping around, she basically re-enlists into the army, making a reference to the first movie I had made for her. And of course, she decides to fight. As a result of this, she jumps into action as soon as possible, of course. Again, making a reference to her first movie, making it promises that you do have to jump into action and not just stand around. Because you have to actually do something. This could be going on while President Obama is in office, after Bush, of course. The whole 8 years of Obama still could occur in this version of events, folks. However, since there's plenty of terrorist groups out there, this becomes harder than expected. Much harder. This was because of the fact that Bush had failed to keep his promise, which was he stated that he was going to change the government up over there and make it more democracy for everyone, which of course he didn't keep his promise. During this heated battle, of course, this does trigger some memory. This goes back to her flashback when she had in her prequel where she had to do some things in the battlefield of World War One. She recognizes that this is, of course, really terrifying, and she feels like history is just repeating itself. But humans keep choosing the wrong choice here. But at least on the bright side, she views this that is not nearly as big as World War One, no World War Two. If anything, this is more of a skirmish kind of a fight. But it still can trigger some flashbacks to that particular time, you know, for consistency. To make it more sense as to what I'm talking about, she could actually be suffering from this, folks. Because when you think about it, it would actually make logical sense. And she could, of course, get some treatments and whatnot, but she still could, to some degree, suffer from this. This could be a part of the story here. Of course, we're going to have Wonder Woman in a scene where she has a conversation with Obama, I guess, just to have plans to reinsure everything. But the thing is, she's still going to have that disorder, like I said, and of course, she could trigger a lot of stuff, and she becomes really angry. But then Supergirl comes in and does attempt to calm her down, of course, quite a bit. But the thing is, she tells Wonder Woman over here that she can't go into battle if this kind of thing keeps going, but she refuses to stay down. Of course, this kind of a thing puts stress with their relationship and causes the friends to actually fight one another from time to time. Since Wonder Woman does not want to stay around and just sit, this creates tension between the two characters because Supergirl feels like there could be other ways to fix the problem. However, these two characters still want the tension of the Middle East to be stopped for good, and that's the thing. Supergirl stays behind while Wonder Woman herself just flees into battle to do these fights. And of course, as time goes, it just gets worse and worse and worse. The fight in the Middle East just actually worsens despite Wonder Woman's presence being there. Sorry, the thing is, she's fighting, of course. There's going to be lots of intense... Just like in real life, folks, there's been plenty of Muslim women and men who actually joined the American troops to fight, which is fine, of course. But Supergirl does realize that the battle is becoming too heated up. By which I mean is that there's a huge wave of ISIS troops coming to Wonder Woman's direction. They're trying to tell her by using this communication device, but of course Wonder Woman has been too stubborn to actually listen. Of course Wonder Woman does, of course, just continue to fight, even though there is in fact a large wave of them coming to her direction. But the thing is, with this communication device, Supergirl does yell at Wonder Woman to just get the hell out of there, because there's too many of them. But this does force Supergirl to actually go to where she's at to rescue her, of course, because she does understand Wonder Woman wants to protect the innocent Muslims from the terrorist group. And once Supergirl comes out there, there's lots of group has already revived. So of course this group, as in some ways, had captured her for briefly anyway. I think she just escapes their trap. But she's not in the same area as where Wonder Woman is at. She's still too far away. So she realizes that there's still quite a few that's heading to her direction. So of course this brings more tension, more pressure on Supergirl's shoulders. However, as these groups continued their approach to Wonder Woman suddenly realized that Supergirl was actually right all along. There's quite too many of them for her to handle. She just have to ponder about her strategy. In reality, Obama himself had actually brought in many of the American troops back into America so they can be with their families. That piece of history can be part of the story as well. And just so you know, folks, I'm not saying a group of people is a part of this or that. I'm just pointing this out because I don't want to think anybody be thinking I'm saying somebody is a certain way, which of course isn't true. Just think of this particular storyline that I'm pitching. Think of it as a hypothetical scenario in which they could have used for a storyline for a film if I have directed it. Just think this as a way if certain things had actually played differently in real life. Think of that and you could easily apply certain things to the overall story. Case in point, such as, what if Wonder Woman had actually prevented Donald Trump from becoming president? This could also be part of the overall story of the film. And what if he had never become president of the United States? Which would mean she would have prevented him from doing all these terrible things that he's been doing recently, folks. And yes, I know there's plenty of people who are supporting him, like some of the FBI, some of the officials of the government are helping him out too. But she could also face them as well. Yes, I know there's plenty of Donald Trump supporters who were actually supporting him way back when. This kind of a thing could be actually played in the story somehow. And this kind of thing could be really early on, of course, folks, some sort of manner. So I think this would be a good way to add tension and conflict, kind of a thing. Yeah, it's just political, but that's fine. I personally don't mind it, really. But there's quite a many of them, so this could add tension to the overall story. While at the same time, of course, Wonder Woman could actually help the Muslim people, because not all of them are bad, but they're being viewed as terrible anyway, so she wants to help them out because she views this country of America to be for everybody, regardless of your country of origin. So she wants to fight for their rights. And then, of course, at the same time, Supergirl wants to help them out as well, of course, obviously, in one manner or another. Of course, she wants to use the law, but at the same time, when it gets down to it, of course, you do have to fight. Obama would catch the win of this, and of course, we can just say that, for argument's sake, that he was also trying to help those two women out as well. But then, these two women were probably the reason as to why they were sent back over here, due to the fact that Obama could have just said something to that fact, in the lines of the commander-in-chief for the American troops may need some assistance. But of course, things are not easily as done, because, like I was saying before, the reason Supergirl could be over to another area is because Wonder Woman was being all stubborn and didn't want to listen. And she takes it upon herself to maybe go after them. And maybe find some information about the leader. I mean, she herself could go after him some sort of manner to stop him. This due to the fact that he kept sending more of his troops to where Wonder Woman is at. So Supergirl comes up with some sort of strategy to where she sent about half her group to where Wonder Woman is at to aid her, and about the rest of it would go along with her. And she realizes there's quite a bit of them, even with the location of the, I guess you could say, the leader. And of course, things to be proved to be even harder than they would be, of course. Gotta give the heroes of the story some sort of challenge, I guess you can say, to make it more suspenseful. Granted, sure, you could always argue that Supergirl could always use some sort of communicating device. But, again, just for argument's sake, let's just say the ISIS terrorist group had severed the tower in which they were using. So, pretty much, she had to do something herself, along with the aid of her own group. They want her to be completely defenseless anyway. She's only one person after all. And of course, you know, we see the fact that Wonder Woman herself could be helping out the American troops, attempting to prevent anyone from actually getting killed off. And of course, she wants to help out the good citizens from the Middle East and make sure that the good citizens won't die either. So, because she does value her life even in battle. But things getting worse when Supergirl realizes that there's a giant robot. It's been released by the leader. One giant robot. So, of course, this kind of thing can be seen from where Wonder Woman is at. This machine is that big. She can actually see that big thing from a distance, which of course causes her to be worried. And this thing keeps approaching. It gets really strong, of course. He does run amok on this particular city. And since he keeps destroying the city with the good citizens are out, Supergirl does her best to actually fight it off. Of course, fighting off the giant robot would be a lot harder than expected, because the machine would be proving to be much tougher than they would originally expected. Let's just say, just for the sake of argument here, folks, they already had enough material to build one giant robot. And they could have discovered plans that these people are planning to make more as they cheer these robotic menace to destroy Supergirl. Of course, she would do her best to destroy this machine, but of course, eventually Wonder Woman would come to her aid as she finds a particular way to make her way through it. But of course, this would of course take a good while, since Wonder Woman herself is in a particular different part of the land. She's not together with a friend over here. Yeah, they would be friends at this point, of course. But eventually, sooner or later, Supergirl would come down at least some of the troops and fight some of those off as well, while simultaneously fighting the robot. Wonder Woman would eventually come to the rescue, and to some degree, I guess you can say, because she views Supergirl's help as a good way to do justice, so to speak. But even then, with her assistance, the gigantic robot would still prove to be much of a threat, because it's easier said than done, so to speak. And as they continue to battle, you know, there'll be tons of explosions, of course, because, hey, this is a superhero kind of a thing. explosions needs to be done over here, folks. But of course, both of these characters would do their best to make sure these robots is brought down, and of course, attempting to make some communication with the outside forces, aka the American troops, that they shouldn't come along because maybe this particular character is too tough for almost anybody. So of course, Supergirl would come up with some sort of a strategy and let Wonder Woman know about it, so they'd be able to defeat the mechanical monster. And of course, they eventually will actually do that and make sure that they will stop the ISIS plans from building another, destroy the factories, pretty much prevent them from making another. So of course, the leader, the ISIS leader, will be eventually caught, whom will expose them that they were actually planning to make a global threat as a whole. But of course, I'm going to be making reference to the Wonder Woman film that I pitched in my previous video, which again I'll put in the link down below just to refresh your memory. In this expanded universe of DC, of course, I do have to pay attention to other films as well, such as Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice. And I did review this film a while ago, and it did get a really poor review from me, folks, which I will also put a link down below for anyone that wants to see my review. In that particular film, we all can see that the main villain of the story is, well, Lex Luthor, the younger version, of course. But since he's pretty much the threat in that movie, and he's pretty much the cause of all those events in that movie, let's just say Wonder Woman had gone in the past, again referring to my previous video, which had time traveling kind of a thing going on. And I'm trying to make sure that the sequel I'm thinking of will be connected to my version of the first film as well. And let's just say that Lex Luthor's friends, or let's just say family members, was actually a follower of Hitler. And let's just say his grandfather or whatnot was actually accidentally killed off in that particular time period in which Wonder Woman was actually in. This means Lex Luthor would never have been born, which would mean it would totally erased all the events of Batman vs Superman. So in this particular version of my story, this would mean that this film would never have existed. In my previous video, I did mention that Churchill would have actually have a conversation with Wonder Woman. And let's just say this would actually be in the history books, and Wonder Woman herself could use this as evidence as to that she actually met the person. And they could have had a good conversation, of course. She could have remembered these great conversations, and she actually likes this kind of a thing. And maybe after the big fight, she could tell stories about this to Supergirl. Now, of course, the movie that she was in, those events in that movie would still be in there, folks. Wonder Woman, the film she was actually in, was not that bad. But if I do have to critique that film for anything, I did feel the whole war aspect of that film could have been used much more. So I'm thinking it could always make it up in this film. And of course, you could have so many memories of other adventures, of course, and make that be a part of the film as well. You could remember the intense fight scenes and whatnot, of course. And there's so many opportunities you could use this, because with a big budget film, you could be really creative, of course. And like I said before, folks, as I mentioned way earlier, she could have prevented Donald Trump from being elected. So this in itself could have led to so many opportunities for storytelling. So again, keep in mind, this could be used as a what-if scenario kind of a thing. So this could be like a hypothetically speaking scenario in reality. So again, you could do this as a way to pretty much exercise in storytelling, because this is fiction, and sometimes the best parts of fiction do have bits of reality. And if Hillary Clinton had actually won the election, who knows how many changes the world would have been, at least for this country anyway. I guess most would agree it would be for the better, I suppose, judging from the recent stuff Donald Trump has been doing. I do think she would have been a much better president, because she does have lots of knowledge on what she could actually be doing, and at least in terms of the political field anyway. But again, I can't really say the direct answer how things will have changed, of course, because no one knows really. So again, you could use this as a particular way to tell the story. So I guess this is how I would have had the sequel handled. I know the director of the Wonder Woman film may have other ideas, of course, but again, this is how I would have done it anyway. But of course, as always, folks, thanks for watching and take care. See ya. Oh yeah.